Hi, you are watching SightsIn and this is Bhumesh. Please do subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch HRs, top leaders, and business heads. Today, we are going to discuss how generative AI is transforming learning and development. If you look at the generative AI and human resources, so I think it is impacting three major roles. One, that is the talent acquisition and recruitment. Second, that is learning and development. And third, that's the total effort. So we have already created a video on how generative AI is transforming talent acquisition and recruitment. We will put the link of that video in description box. Second, learning and development. Today we are going to dive deep and we will also discuss about the total report, how generative AI is going to transform the total report in next video. We have two very senior HR experts today. Let me introduce Mr. Mayank Kumar is a founder of Zimyo, that is HR tech platform, and Ms. Sulbha Kaushal, she is Chief People Officer at RenewBuy. So, Mayank, if I come to you first, so what is your opening comment on this? That how generative AI is transforming learning and development?
I'll start with the opening comment as to adopt it, let it empower you, and let the innovation change happen. Right, that's my opening comment. So I think in L&D space specifically, AI is going to transform a lot of lives. It's going to change the way how employee experience is perceived. So I think it is imminent. It's going to happen, and the faster corporates adopt it, the better it will be for the employees and the in the larger welfare scheme.
And Sulbha, what is your opening comment?
I think whenever we have seen technology, advances, it has always brought some positive change in the lives of human beings. And taking a leap further, where technology is now AI driven, I see it as a very positive change because it not only, like Mayank said, is going to empower and bring more revolution. I think it is also going to add, customize, make it easy, make it interesting, and far more enriching experience for people. And it will also be very inclusive because not everyone has a particular type of learning. With this new technologies coming into the play, we will find options available for everybody to learn in their own pace, with their own style, with their own interests. So that's how I look at it.
Sometimes if you see the challenges in learning and development, so I think personalized learning programs, that is the challenge. How you customize the learning program, how you individualize the learning and development programs, that is the challenge. So how do you see that here generative AI is going to help us?
I think the first thing which generative AI is helping us in, personalizing, like I was just mentioning in my opening statement, it helps you create content the way I want to learn. If I'm a reader, maybe it will give me things to read. If I like to see, it will give me more visual options. If I like to experience, probably it will give me more experiential learning, right? So the way we need to look at using generative AI for a personalized experience is first understanding the need of the individual learner. And then once you understand the need of what style of learning is something that is more interesting to me and more adaptive to me, immersive for me, that's how you can then look at various, like I said, you can have games, you can have visuals, you can have more interactive. That's how you kind of personalize it for the individuals. And the more you add layers in terms of if you can see your real time output of the learning that you are doing, how much are you learning, and if you can immediately get some kind of a feedback, that kind of becomes even more personalized. So if it gives me some indication, Sulbha, you are doing so and so good, but this is the area you need to still work upon. It kind of, then it's so much more personalized, and I know instantly what is the area of focus that I need to do, and how I need to look at it, and what further efforts are required from my. And I think that's when you're able to create such a customized and an individual. So I will not look at a training program which is for the masses. I will look at a training program which is for me, for Sulbha, addressing my needs, my interest, and delivered in the way I like to learn. So I think that's, I would love to see generative AI working upon and enhancing the entire experience.
And Mayank, as a HR tech professional, what is your comment on this?
Well, I think I second the thought that Sulbha has said. I think personalized learning is the way forward. Gone are the days when a generic, uh, let's say, a training module will work for an individual, right? Learning has to be adaptive. It has to be global in its orientation. So if you look at the later launches of the generative AI, they're building a large scale model, right? It's called LLM, large language models, which are actually collecting the way the same data across the globe, across the wide spaces in which you operate. So you might be a training professional, you might be a science graduate, you might be an engineer, right? Learning differs by the geography, by the pedigree. It varies even in your professional careers, in the kind of scale of company you are in, right? So if you sitting out of a SMB business, a small medium business, trying to learn, a global orientation about how the same thing can be done, I think generative AI is bringing it to your fingertips. And not only that, let's say you get the global best at your fingertips. It's also allowing you to adopt, like what Sulbha said, like it is going to actually enhance your learning at the pace that you're comfortable with, in the way that you like it. And I'm talking about where LLMs meets NLP, right? Naturalistic programming, right? It goes to the psychometric behaviors on how you learn, right? That kind of learning space, right? Question number one comes easy. If you solve it, you get a tougher question number two, right? If the question number two is tougher, you're not able to solve it. It paces, it's slow, right? So you learn and adopt. And as I said, like it can also change the variations that you're learning at the moment, right? In the morning you are learning maybe, if you're engineering on the front end, and by the evening the learning can still continue in a different behavioral training, right? Not just hard code coding. So I think generative AI has brought everything all at once. It's up to you now how to make the best use case of it.
Basically, content, we can get the better content and more personalized content here, maybe in different languages as well. We can get the content. So that absolutely that is going to help us. Second important point is how we engage the learners, how we engage the employees, how we provide them the world-class learning experience. That is a challenge for all the L&D leaders, I think. Like, what is your take on this? How it is going to transform the learning experience of users? What is the content?
Exactly.
And there are also various things which impact when we talk about the learning.
Yeah, of course, when
experience.
you said personalization, it can start with as simple as localization. There might be plethora of content, but if it's written in English and the person who is to train on it can only understand Hindi or let's say Bengali, would need that localized content, right? And again, just a translate, maybe a Google Translate or a language translate cannot serve the purpose, right? You have to also understand the intent on how something has to be trained, right? What that particular sentence means. So a literal translate will not convey the right message. So I'm saying that generative AI is bringing to you the same content that was written by the best of the scholars sitting out of London, sitting out of SF, which someone sitting out of Barrage in UP can consume in his local Hindi dialect, both verbal, both audio, and maybe some visuals also. Now, generative AI has transversed the video world also, right? So you're getting it real time learner. In fact, when I was in school, there was a training where it was told to us that 80% of the learning happens by what we see, right? 10% from hearing. So if you have to memorize something, you can either keep going through it again and again, or you can say to yourself where you learn it. But there's also a way where cognitive abilities help you to learn it faster. So I'm trying to say is that imagine a kid who is growing on his path. And when I say L&D, I'm looking at still a fresher who's just starting a vocational training. Imagine the kind of abilities he's getting to learn it. His experience, and we're talking about employee experience, that's my point two, right? Extension of what I was trying to say is that for an employee, if the company is getting him the right training on the L&D front, right engagements. So I would, rather than company having a physical fun activities if the model trains on what am I liking in the company, right? If there are more more R&R activities happening, even a small thumbs up happening on my application in the engagement module, more Slack conversations, more real-time updates by the company on what is it going to launch on the product activities. So imagine a a transitioning phase where in the company someone has gone from a manual learning to a very highly engaged system where the system is telling it, this is what is coming new, right? I'll be the most engaged employee ever. And it is impacting you in all the fronts: performance, R&R, daily engagements, your checklist, tasks. It's enabling you to do everything much quicker, much faster. I think that's the best employee experience that any employee can think of in future, and generative AI is leading the way.
Sulbha, what is your take on this?
When we talk about learning, and especially at the workplace, in the traditional or the erstwhile era, it was always a task for the L&D teams to have people come into the classrooms and attend. And even when they were to come to the classroom, there was strict instruction: no phones, no calls, don't step out, etc. So to capture their attention and ensure that they go through those many hours of learning used to be a mammoth task, to be very frank. Now, from there to engagement, when you say when the individual is interested in the learning, and individual gets best of it, and it is also in the interest of the organization because there is a constant need of upskilling, reskilling the employees. So how do you make the content engaging? It's not only about the content, it is about how do you excite them to even come up and look for various things that they need to learn and adapt to, because that is part of their job, and that's only going to help them in future and the organization. So I think what even Mayank was saying, that 80% learning is happening through seeing. At workplace, I think 80% of the learning happens on the job. So how can you engage multiple people, cross team functions, and then connect and collaborate? I think if you can, when you talk about gamification, it's also, how can you bring together different people and have a more immersive learning? And that's when, people learn, because it is not anymore like a chore. It is more like a, game that you're having, which creates excitement. And that kind of, I think, creates more engagement within the organization for the people. And human mind is always looking for, rewards. And if there is, and Mike also did mention about it, a thumbs up being shown. I think within, when there is a self-assessment of you are from a particular department, a particular level, and what are the competencies level that you need to be exhibiting, and when you do kind of those kind of an assessment and rank yourself, as everyone likes to be the best, and at a workplace, the intention is to put the best foot forward. And then you kind of keep, even if you don't want to compete with others, you want to compete with your own self. How am I faring in this journey? Am I there or not? If I'm looking for a promotion, what all do I need to do? So I think those kind of elements, if you kind of tease the brain in the right direction, and give them the sense of direction and an interesting platforms, the method in which they'll enjoy, I think then the level of learning and engagement can go to a very interesting one. And then it will not no more be people needing to be pushed to drive their learning. I think then it happens automatically, and that's what the magic is all about. And then that's the true, arrival of the L&D in the employment space.
And the assessment, or you can say the effectiveness of training. When we come to the effectiveness of training, so if sometimes there's a pull and push factors as well. If employee itself is interested for the training on any particular subject, then obviously you will see the better results. And here I think the predictive analytics come, which can help you also to understand the learning patterns of employee, and what is learning experience. These are the things I think this can help you. Mike, how do you see the predictive analysis analytics can change the game in the L&D part?
As I said that in the starting itself comment, I said that now are the times when you are getting the global learning at your fingerprints, right? So both, and also I'll take a cue from what Sulbha said, that I'm not competing against the global benchmarks. I'm also competing against me. So a predictive learning where my empirical workings, my empirical learnings come into play, on what are the times, when is the time when I am the more productive. So even the softer aspects on how you learn, what kind of trainings you love, right? What kind of content you consume is going to be the future. And again, predictive learning with a large language model is going to be the future, because there we might think that we might be very one of a kind person, but let's say you are ENFJ, right? A type of personality, or maybe a type A personality, right? With a similar skill set, with a similar score in your competitions or your corporate career growth. I think there is a set learning pattern that will work for you, which would have in turn have happened for maybe tens or maybe a million of folks who are going your same career trajectory. So predictive analytics is gonna carve the way for you, not just today, but even time hence from here, right? And it cannot just be companies who can, adopt to how they would want to be trained, but it's also as an individual, your onus on how you train your own system on how training happens to you for a bigger career growth, for a bigger career path. So I'll rest to you. I think there is no other way. I'll say it better. I think the future is about predictive learning, and you have to be at pace to know your own cognitive abilities on how you want your training to happen. Yeah.
So I would like to add you something.
While Mayank did speak, all the valid points regarding how it impacts and how it needs to be used at an individual level, I'll take a leaf from here. And I think when you're talking about, learning effectiveness and using predictive analysis around it, I think it is also for the organizations. It also helps the organization to predict the future needs of the organization, because how the environment is constantly changing, how the dynamics are. So how does the organization prepare for a unforeseen change, and then giving more insights on the future skills that will be required by the people? What is the current level of the skills in the organization, and what is the different level at which they need to grow and take their people along? I think there also predictive analysis comes into play and will add a lot of value. And for the individuals also, I think the onus obviously lies on the person. How generative AI or these automation tools will help is, for an individual, they will carve out understanding their patterns, their historical data, and then give out the nuggets or the recommendation basis, again, their role, their level, their needs, their aspirations, and their own pace. So I think that's the beautiful combination that will emerge for the organization and for the people through this.
Sulbha, sometimes the real-time feedback that also enhances the effectiveness, that also helps in growth. How you see that this technology can help also in real-time feedback?
Great. Romesh, I have seen, and we constantly even train managers on giving feedback. And believe you me, if it is a good feedback, people are very comfortable. They do it, effortlessly. But when it comes like a development feedback, a lot of times people have a challenge. And the good part of the machine is that they're agnostic about the emotions, right? And they can give the true feedback, what is actually required. And even for the recipient, because it is coming from a machine, and it is so personal that nobody else is also kind of getting privy to it, the ability or the chances of the person who is receiving it and seeing it more objectively becomes higher, because sometimes when the feedback provider is not giving the feedback correctly, using the right words, it is not in the development direction, it may lead to a lot of damage. Because at least in our context, in an Indian culture, direct communication is still not really part of our culture. If you look at it, the way we are generally raised, and then the way our social setup is, the direct communication is not something that is very easily digestible to a lot of people. And when it comes to at workplace and giving feedback, it's a very different ball game. So people do sometimes not do a great job of it. And if technology can play a part here, I think that will be a good idea, because again, both for the recipient and for the organization who needs to give that feedback, it works both ways beautifully well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the emotions part we are talking about. So when we are talking about the negative feedback, so generally you many times you face some emotional outcome. So you that becomes very difficult situation. So definitely here it is going to help us. Mike, would you like to share something here?
On this front itself, yes, I think I completely resonate the fact that feedbacks are very hard to digest. Again, because many a times it's just opinions getting passed as feedback on human front. But I'll definitely like to take the cue that AI will revolutionize this, because your feedback is real time, it's adaptive, it's exactly the input that you would have given. So either you are getting feedback compared to the world's best as per your designation, location, geography, the limits, the professional skill set. So of course, you're getting the real-time feedbacks in the L&D space, but also not only just for the employees, but also as a corporate, you're getting real-time feedbacks on the salary benchmarks, on the skill set benchmarks, JD to skill set mapping, and the career growth progression mapping. So I think real-time feedback is both important for the corporate and the employee. And I think it's going to benefit the productivity for both the individual and the organization together. That's my verdict.
And when we're talking about the generative AI, we also talk about certain ethical considerations. We talk about the risk. We talk about the threats. What are the threats along with the generative AI? So, do you see there are also some ethical consideration when we're talking about generative AI and L&D?
I am a I'm firm believer of you know ethics first, building an organization on the ethics first front. So I think while you can let the bigger generative AI lead your L&Ds, employee engagements, and many other things, but at the end it should have the human validation to it, right? Because you never know what the large language models are learning, right? Tomorrow there's more news of violence, crimes on the internet, right? Your content, even the way you're training, right? And a subtle example can be if you're building a question paper around decision making, and you get examples of two people are running on a train and from opposite direction. What time do they meet? Vis-a-vis two criminals running, from different ends of the building where a third person of police is coming in, right? So you're getting it in a soft way. It starts getting into your learning process, because but you are getting that input, that output, because of the input that the generative AI is having. So I don't know how many of the people know this, but lot of these large scale models still limit learning from very open source modules, and I'm talking about different violent websites to not productive ones, right? So it's still a very limited learning, and it's good. So there's still a human at the end of it, ensuring that the models are learning from the right input. So I think ethics comes into front the day, let's say from a large scale model, we define that, let's train a model for our organization, right? And the person who is holding the baton to ensure that the training is happening in an ethical way, what if he lets his guard down, right? What if the system gets infiltrated with much more darker components which would not serve the company in a good way? What if you're getting like how we get our high on the Instagram vanity matrices? What if it's allowing you to rate other people's on their looks, on their on just being good? So of course in companies people get appointed, but if you were to believe AI, which is let open, it will go for the more popularist, more comfortable learnings and more engagements, and finally the easier outcomes. So I think it has to be safeguarded. It has to be guarded well. You have to ensure the right inputs come into the system so that the right outputs go out. So I'm a firm believer on the ethical handling of the AI. And this is my message to many people. If you're unsure on how to train the models, if you are unsure if you can stop the infiltration, I think it's okay for the safety measures to come in before you adopt Gen AI in your workplace. Yeah. Thanks.
Sulbha, what is your comment on this? How do you see the content prices that may be in L&D?
So, Mayank did touch upon a very valid point. And see, these models are fairly new at the moment. A lot has been adopted from open sources, as Mayank mentioned. And we have seen in the past, there has been instances where there has been a clear bias against, either a country or a race or a, ethnicity, etc., etc. And when you're when it is used for such a good cause of learning and development for the people, you don't want such biases, you don't want such negative influence coming into the way, which can impediment and doesn't really work in the true spirit of learning for the individuals, right? So that's definitely one part of it and needs to be taken care of, because and that's when the human intervention still comes into way, because validation is important. You can't be exposing your people to a content which has still a bias and which may not be true. So that's there. And also a lot of times, such platforms ask for a lot of your own personal information, right? And they also get to know a lot about you, your preferences. It exposes you a lot. And again, we have seen how social media platforms use that data and sometimes exploit that data, and so there has to be a fine balance, because your own data and privacy does get compromised, the way and how much you are using and sharing. So that also kind of becomes a challenge for the organization and sometimes for the people, because you want to use it, but how much of to use and what information to share and how much not to share. So I think that's where the ethical dilemma comes, and that consideration has to be taken into the picture. And also, in terms of when the assessment happens, and because now, even Mike was saying, it's now globe is your own world. Now you can be, evaluating yourself against the global best. And while you may want to be seen like that, but sometimes um, the facilities that would have been there, or the general environment what would there have been, may be very different from what your organization in your country will differ. So sometimes the fairness or the level of assessment then can be a bit of a thing in that may come into a question. So use it, but yeah, when it comes to the right usage or the ethical usage, one still needs to be a little more mindful, because like we have been discussing, it is still in the evolving stage, it is still not fully mature, and one should be really cognizant of the fact that it is administered. The data which is shared is sanitized in that sense, and there should not be any leakage or distribution of the personal data, etc. So I think these are some of the things that when it comes to the ethical deployment, one needs to take into the consideration.
Absolutely. Very insightful response from both of you. Mayank, one more important question is, and I think you are the best person to respond on this. Right now, if you see the adoption of generative AI and human resources, so I think maybe 8 to 10% of companies they have started the adoption of generative AI in human resources. Maybe if my data is right. My question is how we can integrate the generative AI with the current tools, L&D tools, what we are using, because it has a cost.
Well, no, of course it has a cost. In fact, when we tell the pricing to a customer, the first reaction is, "Oh my God!" But see, there is a training needed across the space, right? So you can have AI built for policy JD creation, right? So gone are the days when there used to be a manual effort on building a good JD, 5 days, 10 days, line, right? The tool brings the best of the world and gives it to you. So I think. The insertion of generative AI can be on the things which are very manual in learning today, right? Skill set defining, your content creation for the assessments, right? Interview skill assessments, right? So the bots today can take your interviews and give you a predictive on where you can do better, can work better. If you're from engineering, the tool can tell you how to code better. In fact, there are a lot of no code platforms that are coming in. So depending on the skill set that you are in, I think the from an L&D perspective, it can be well synced with the system on both assessments and learnings, video content assessments, video content creation. You can have your engagement. So based on the engagement also, what are the kind of learnings on the behavioral training aspects, and of course R&R to help you analyze how you have been performing through and throughout. And of course the benchmarking. So let me not forget, with the kind of skill set that you would want your employees as a corporate to train on, the global benchmarking on the analytics front, that is also one insertion I would love to do. So again, I'm giving a loosely tied answer because the day you let Gen AI to run the L&D completely, there will be just one tool which will be doing the enormity of all the things that we just talked about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, time is also running out, and we have only a couple of minutes left. So, I would like to know your concluding remarks. How do you see? I think we have discussed all the important points related to the role of Unity and NLT, but maybe still something is important and we did not touch here. So, if you can share as a concluding.
So I think, Ramesh, my concluding remark is whenever we see a wave of technology, always be embracing it and try to use it for your advantage. Don't be a slave of it or don't get intimidated by it. Both are not a great signs. I think the moment and the human value will never diminish. So people should not get worried. Oh my God, generative AI or AI coming and my job will be lost. I think it is only there to enable you to do things faster, better, more accurate. It is only there to help you become a better version of yourself. So embrace it, use it to your advantage, both for your individual self and for the organizations.
And Mayank, any of your final comments?
Well, yes, I think I'm still a firm believer on the ethical first, building an ethical first company. So I think while companies who will not be adopting to Gen AI are living their Kodak moments, so digital photography equivalent is now here. Gen AI is there. Use it to your advantage, but ensure that the gates are safeguarded with the best of principles and not be very human dependent. That these are the company guidelines, guards. We have to maintain them. And I think let national courts take over, right? The company will grow, individual as an individual, employees will grow. And if the principles are maintained, business will grow, right? That's my verdict to it. And I think this is bound to happen.
So if we try to conclude, so I think the generative AI is going to immensely help in content creation and in providing a great learning experience and engaging experience. Thank you so much, Sulbha and Mayank, for joining the conversation and sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For the
Thank you,
opportunity,
Ramesh.
Ramesh.
Thank you, Sulbha.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Mayank.